Hello guys, Charles here and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about phrasing. I put a questionnaire on my community tab a couple of weeks ago and a couple of people who commented, Philip and Renato I think, sorry if I'm pronouncing that terribly, both requested a discussion of phrasing. It's a pretty deep topic and it's actually a really difficult one to teach. But I thought I'd give 3 tips on phrasing in this video. If you want me to go into any more detail on these in the future, then I'd be more than happy to do so. But I think it probably gives a good overview of some of the best phrasing advice that I've come across. So the first and probably simplest idea here is that music is a language. We've all heard this before. Now some of you have probably seen, I think it was actually Scott Henderson talked about this in his DVD. I've heard Victor Wooten talking about this as well. Lots of great musicians discuss this idea of using conversation as a framework around which phrases can be built. Now what this gives is a really natural to us ebb and flow to the phrasing, because of course we spend all day conversing. We're quite used to the idea of what feels like a natural response. And so using that as our framework around which we phrase melodies is actually really useful. What this really ends up being though is just a rhythm first concept. I have preached about this at length, talking about Dizzy Gillespie and how rhythm comes first, rhythm, rhythm, rhythm. This is just another way to get that same result really, using this comfortable English language, or I would imagine this works in any language. I can only speak English because I'm ignorant, but I'd assume this would work in any language. So we could take a simple phrase such as, hello, how are you? Very well, thank you, would be a very sensible response to that. We could play A minor pentatonic. I could go, hello, how are you? Very well, thank you. Okay, so nothing groundbreaking at all there, but there's logic to it. And that's really what we're aiming for here. I don't think there's many players who are playing and having a conversation in their head whilst they play, but it's a practice tool. Now, of course, you could use this on longer phrases as well, longer sentences. You could say, do you want to go to the shops? Yes, that sounds good, thanks, or something. Do you want to go to the shops? Yes, that sounds good, thank you. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's using this idea of rhythm first to come up with something that has a bit of balance to it is what we're aiming for. Again, most professional musicians are not sitting there thinking about this stuff as they play, but this is a good starting point. Probably the simplest of the points we'll look at today. The second phrasing idea is a bit more specific to Renato's question, which was phrasing note groups. Now, this I want to refer to one of the books I'm actually reading at the minute, which is Forward Motion. Oh, can you see that? Forward motion. Forward motion is a concept created by Hal Galper. And I say created by, it's his summary of what's already happening in music is called forward motion, and it's a very deep topic. Obviously, there's a whole book there, so I can't get into all of it now. But to really undersell what forward motion is, it's this idea that something either grooves or it doesn't. Something's either got this sense of propulsion, this sense of forward motion, sense of movement, or it doesn't. Here's a really simple way that we can feel that. So if I take a simple exercise using groups of 4 in B flat major, these are going to be 8th notes at the speed 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's ba, 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 so on and so forth. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's just an exercise at this point. It doesn't sound really very musical. Maybe the first 2 times round sounds interesting enough, but it doesn't have that real sense of propulsion, sense of forward motion. So all we can do is what some people call rhythmic permutation, some call syncopation. We're going to basically offset the rhythm. So we're going to, rather than starting on beat 1, we're going to start on any offbeat, but let's start on the and of 1. So the second 8th note of the bar. Exactly the same exercise, and see how that sounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so already, I mean, I can really feel the difference as a player. Hopefully you can hear the difference as a listener. But I'm feeling now a real sense of, yeah, like propulsion, like I'm getting somewhere with that. Now, you wouldn't want to sit and play a whole permutation like that for 8 or 16 bars, because of course it would be too long, but I could definitely get away with that a lot longer than I could playing it on the beat. It's got this real sense of motion now. So what I want you to take away from this point is that you'll see this in all the bebop heads as well. Most melodies in that style of music start on offbeats, and it's because it gives this immediate sense of propulsion. It's like taking a quick breath. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, da 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 da, and it's like ba ba da da da, and it starts you off. It's like the starting gun goes on the beat, and then you go a tiny bit afterwards, an eighth note afterwards, or whichever division you like. But it just gives the phrases a bit more momentum, a bit more propulsion. So try maybe combining tip 1 and tip 2, have some sentences that start on offbeats and come up with what feels like a sensible response. If you want to check out that book, it's Hal Galper, Forward Motion. I'd massively recommend it. I haven't quite finished it yet, but there's been some absolutely great insights in that already, so check that one out. And the third tip I want to give you comes from Mike Longo. Now, Mike Longo was Dizzy Gillespie's piano player. Hal Galper, who I've just mentioned, was Cannonball's piano player, so they're really in that particular tradition, these guys. Mike Longo is famous as a player in his own right, but he also interviewed Dizzy Gillespie in probably the most extensive interview that anyone's ever done, where we're talking real music, real deep questions. And Mike Longo turned a lot of those conversations into educational material. Now, a concept that Mike and Dizzy are really big on is this idea of ontological music, which I think I'm saying correctly, ontological. Again, for the purposes of this video, we can think of that as meaning that it's referring to some sort of higher power. Now, that doesn't have to be God. It could be some sort of spiritual thing. It could be just something you're passionate about. It doesn't really matter, but it's some external thing. And the idea is that by learning to tap into that source, whatever it is, we only need to put in a little bit of effort ourselves, and the rest of it will come from outside of ourselves. Now, I used to be a little bit, I don't know, turn my nose up at stuff that sounds a little bit hippie-ish like that. And it's because it didn't work. That's because you do have to put in some work in your own right as well. Just like, you know, a devout believer of any faith wouldn't throw themselves off the roof of a building and say, God will catch me, because that's not the point. We're not trying to test the higher power here. You still have to do a lot of the work yourself. We get the guidance from beyond. So how does this work in terms of phrasing? Well, what Mike suggests we do is make a clear positive statement to start our improvisation. It can be syncopated, it can be conversation based like we've already talked about, but we make a clear positive statement. Our second phrase is some sort of reiteration of that first statement. That doesn't mean it has to be a repetition, but it can be. If something's good enough to play once, it's good enough to play 2 or 3 times. What I like to do is what we've just talked about in tip 2. I like to play a very similar thing again, rhythmically displaced. What Mike suggests would happen here is that if you do that, if you play a clear positive statement, a reaffirmation of it, then this ontological idea takes over and the solo just kind of begins to unravel. Does this work? Well, it's up to you as a player whether you want this to work or not. I would suggest that this doesn't work if you aren't listening to lots of music, if you aren't practicing lots. You know, it's not our first ever day playing the guitar and we go, right, well, I'll play a positive statement and a reaffirmation of it, and then I'm going to play an unbelievable solo. Of course, that's not going to work this way. But you have this body of language in your head from listening to loads and loads of music. These ideas just kind of marinate and come out in your playing. Let's look at an example of this. We might do a really simple, again, let's just stick to A minor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that was just the first thing that came to my mind in A minor. I can't remember what I played, but I did something along these lines. So that was the statement, and here's the reaffirmation. Something like that. Again, you can look back at what I played. But it's similar, but maybe different. It progresses. And then from there, I just played, and I felt like I wanted to go up here, I think. Again, I can't remember what I did because I was just letting it happen. So that's a really great way to take the pressure off yourself. As with anything, if you overthink it, you're not going to do it. Walking across the stage at graduation, if you think about walking, you're going to walk like an idiot. You've just got to kind of relax and walk. All this stuff that we've got in our head and under our fingers, it will come out if you let it come out. You've got to kind of tease it out, and that's what the positive statement and the reaffirmation of it allows you to do. Don't dismiss this idea of a higher power or whatever it is. Again, it's not a religious thing, it's not a spiritual thing. It's just submitting yourself to whatever you like and just letting it take over from that point. And I personally have found that really, really helpful. And combining it with thinking about rhythm first or conversation and syncopating my ideas and listening to loads of music, my phrasing has improved drastically over the last couple of years alone, just by me thinking about it more. I haven't really got any specific practice routines or anything like that. I'm just observing it. And when I listen to players, I'm not listening to like the note choice or anything like that. You kind of get to the point where you think, well, they've only got 12 notes to choose from, so they've probably got something more interesting going on in their playing, and that's their phrasing, their tone, and of course time, which is very closely related to both tone and phrasing. So hopefully the two gentlemen who asked about phrasing, hopefully that's kind of given you a starting point. Like I say, if you want me to dive into these in some detail, I'm more than happy to do that. If there's anything you'd like to discuss, leave me a comment down below. We can discuss it in a video. If you found this one useful, please do give it a like, subscribe, ding that notification bell and share with any of your friends. And as always, I hope you're all doing very well, getting plenty of practice in, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.
Roll up, let me embed a story you'll never forget. A drip, drip, but drowning in debt now. You can't buy your way out, and I heard you find it difficult to cope. Well, here by this bottle full of hope.